Welcome, Laura Brent. It's your first time in Timișoara, and you're a cyber defense officer at the NATO. Before to start the interview, I want to know more. I want to know more about your position because we know, but we want more details.
Of course. So I work within the international staff where I am a cyber defense officer. And so really we are responsible for helping provide guidance, develop policy, and then implement the policy of the alliance. So working with allies to develop and then implement their ideas. So working at a political level on cyber defense issues.
That's great. And what you do exactly?
So I'm not sure how familiar you are with NATO, but the most senior political body is the North Atlantic Council, so the NAC. So they are the ultimate decision makers of NATO policy and what NATO's actions are. So my team specifically supports the Cyber Defense Committee, which is the senior political body for cyber defense in particular. So we on a day-to-day basis are consulting with nations or working to conduct staff talks, for example, with the EU, or, for example, coming here to talk more about NATO and what we're working on and trying to get the message out about that. So it's very much a policy-related job, and working, again, with allies, with partners, with other staffs and international organizations on common cyber defense issues.
That's interesting. And what are the priorities here in this? About the NATO and the alliance here. What are the priorities here?
Sure. So again, the way NATO really sets big strategic priorities is through our summits, which generally happen every 2 years. So there was just one in Brussels in just July of this year. And then previous to that, the last one was in Warsaw in 2016. So a lot of our current work is being driven by those two most recent summits. So for example, in 2016, heads of state and government announced a cyber defense pledge where allies have agreed to go back and improve the cyber defenses of their national infrastructures as a matter of priority. For example, NATO also declared cyberspace a domain of military operations. And so again, so big things like that, strategic direction set at the summit, and then that allows us on a day-to-day basis to go actually work on implementation of those issues. So as staff, perhaps working with our military colleagues about their progress to implement cyberspace as a domain, consulting with nations to see how they've made progress at home, how can we help nations perhaps share best practices with each other on resilience issues, under the Cyber Defense Pledge. So again, big strategic guidance at the summits, and then on a day-to-day basis is making that a reality.
And with the Romania, what are the strategies with our country?
So I would actually highlight one thing in particular. I mean, Romania is, of course, a very active participant on cyber defense issues, and would say that, for example, Romania is the lead nation for the Ukraine Cyber Defense Trust Fund. So they're administering and helping particularly on cyber defense issues for Ukraine. So a number of allies have contributed money and resources, but Romania is the framework nation, so has been key to deliver such capabilities as forensics, sort of situational awareness centers, things like that to Ukraine. So one thing that Romania has done of particular note in cyber defense at NATO. Very appreciative to Romania for that contribution.
That's great. That's great because we have a contribution here. What are the plans for our country and for other countries in cyber defense?
So again, at the highest level, it's working on becoming more resilient at home. Talking, of course, in a NATO framework. Of course, there are national priorities or EU priorities. If you look at, for example, the NIS directive, the Network Information Security Directive. So there are, of course, many different things, many different bodies working on cybersecurity and cyber defense in different ways. But for NATO, again, it's being driven by summits and what allies are really going to bring to accomplish that in specific. So, for example, I would say that different nations are contributing, that all nations, all nations have a responsibility to live up to their commitments under the Cyber Defense Pledge. So continuing to increase their resilience, but then different nations, for example, have hosted conferences in connection with that, and looking forward that this is going to be continuing to really adapt to the geostrategic environment. That if you look at 2018 at Brussels, for example, nations announced that there's going to be a cyberspace operations center within the military command to improve situational awareness, integrate cyberspace into operational planning at all levels, so on the military side. Also, nations announced that they'll be able to integrate sovereign cyber effects volunteered into alliance operations and missions. Nations also discussed that attribution is a very key issue in this space, and while attribution will always remain a national sovereign prerogative, that NATO remains a forum to discuss cyber defense issues and those similar concerns. So I would say that really we continue to sort of make sure that we're keeping pace with technological change and with changes that we are seeing around us. And so that's really what's driving what we're doing on a...
Yes, that's why I want to say, because now we have a lot of information, and with this technology, I think the hackers, to call them like this, they have more possibility to catch some information. They are secrets, or I don't know how we can not have more hackers in this world to reduce them, to say like this.
Well, if you have a perfect answer to that question, you are going to be a very rich and popular person. But no, I would say that we sort of NATO and the allies are absolutely making progress in this space. I would say it is very challenging, but I think there is no option except to get better. We've seen that the true sort of destruction and financial damage done, for example, if you look at last summer at NotPetya, I think caused potentially up to $1 billion of damage for one private company alone. So that this is a financial imperative, is a security imperative, that this is a topic that is here to stay with us. As far as actually improving security, one of the big things that we talk about is really resilience, is that you're not going to be able to stop all attacks, that you're not going to be able to make sure no one's hacking or committing other malicious activity in some way, shape, or form, but that you can deny people benefit by being more secure, by making it harder. You can protect your own assets better, that you can share information to help others across the ecosystem. So I think that unfortunately, there's no sort of silver bullet answer for this, but again, it's raising awareness, it's sharing information better, it's investing in prioritizing defense, it's making sure that you have the right skilled people to actually be able to do these jobs and to pay attention to these sorts of issues, and that not only it's specialists, but really becoming everyone's responsibility. So that just because you're a policy person, if you're working for government, a different kind of policy person doesn't mean you don't have a role in this. And so I think that we really have made progress in raising cyber defense issues really to a strategic level, not just a technical level, that this is something heads of state and government talk about and care about. So again, certainly all problems have not been solved, but I like to think that we are really making progress and that there is more attention and focus on how really key these issues are.
That's a great answer, and thank you for this developing example. So NATO is cyber defense policy, right? And what we'll do in the future after? No, I will change my my question. Sorry. I mean. In the future, what we will do about cyber defense in NATO with our country, of course. What are the what are the strategy or the plans for our country?
So for Romania specifically?
Yeah. If you have. If not, with the other countries.
So I certainly wouldn't ever presume to speak for any ally. So I would leave it to perhaps someone from the Romanian representation to speak to exactly what Romania's strategy is. But at the same time, I think that what we've really been trying to do at the level of NATO and across the alliance is perhaps most simply said as making cyber actually a mainstream issue. That moving again from the technical to more policy and strategic domain, declaring cyberspace a domain of operations that we need to operate as effectively as we do on land, in the air, and at sea, that this is no longer just for specialists, that this needs to be front and center to everyone's own national policies, whether civilian cybersecurity strategies, whether military cyber defense planning, that this is an issue that deserves priority and integration. So I would say that's really what NATO is trying to do, is make sure that this is as integrated to the way that we're thinking as any other domain. And again, continuing to invest and continuing to make sure that sort of the bar of our own security is improving.
Okay, thank you so much, Laura Brent. It's a pleasure again to see you, and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.